So I started looking into it, and that's where I ran into the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a collection of trash that accumulates through the currents and the gyres of the ocean, rotating and collecting all this trash and focusing it into one central location. Uh, the garbage patch isn't just limited to one, or to just the Pacific Ocean or to just one garbage patch. There's 5 total around the world. There's 2 in the Pacific, 2 in the Atlantic, and 1 in the Indian Ocean. The size of this garbage patch, which I focused on, which is the one in between, of course, California and Hawaii, is 2 times the size of Texas or 3 times the size of France. And then it ranges from 5 to 2,000 meters below the surface level of the water. So it is a massive clump of trash, essentially land. Once I started looking more into it, I realized that because it is in no country's territory, and no country is taking the initiative to clean it up. It is not their fault, it is not their trash, essentially. And if a country does take the initiative to involve themselves within this trash, then they're admitting to guilt and that it is their fault. So essentially, it's not me, it's you who has to clean it up. So that got me thinking, who is taking initiative at this point? It's been years since I saw it, and that's when I ran into Oceans Cleanup. Oceans Cleanup's main purpose was to collect this trash from the 5 garbage patches. They first started tackling the ocean ones, and then once they started collecting all this trash and accumulating it all, they realized that their attempts were essentially futile, because they weren't tackling the trash where it starts. That's when they began adding another portion to this project and going to rivers, banks, and lakes, and stopping the trash there while still collecting the trash at the ocean. With this in mind, I wanted to design a floating city that was built out of the trash in the Pacific Garbage Patch. I kind of wanted to pick it up myself, pick up the trash and start creating elements within the architectural realm to design the city. I began to look into a few presidents of floating cities, where I ran into Oceanics Busan and the floating city. While I was looking into all these presidents, I realized that they have a very utopian look to them. And I noticed that if I do design out of trash, it will have a very dystopian look to it. So I began to make my own graphic, collecting images from around the world of cities and countries buried in trash currently, right now, and started to stitch them together to see how this city that I would build would look like. Once I had this in mind, I began to recycle and collect trash myself. I wanted to see what that process was like and what it would take to have a successful recycling and trash collecting environment. Once I started recycling, I noticed that the people who are collecting the trash are also the same people collecting my recycling items. And I was a bit confused as to why the same company was collecting both things. And I looked into it and realized, essentially, no one is recycling correctly. Most homes don't realize that they have to clean and properly dry each product that they throw into the recycling bins. If even one little speck of food is left or any remnants are left within the plastic, then the whole collection becomes contaminated, then having to be hauled back to landfills or the trash collectors to turn into trash. So in the county that I live in, they just thought it would be easier to combine both into one. With this information in mind, I started looking into more types of pollutants to see how many hypocrisies or irony there was to it. So I focused on 4 different types of pollutions, which I think all tie back into the Pacific Garbage Patch. First, I looked into plastic and waste pollution. I made this graphic just by another one because as I was looking into it, major cities such as Tokyo, New York, London, they have this mindset of convenience. It's more convenient to buy more things than it is to just reuse what you have at home. So it's easier to just throw away what you don't want anymore and reforestation. Essentially, it's when you clear out a whole forest and then some companies are nice enough to just plant a new tree. But essentially, in my opinion, and in the research as well, planting a new tree is like putting a band-aid on a broken bone. It will take a long time for the trees to reach their full potential and become beneficial again to our ecosystems and our environment. So these companies just cutting trees, they just plant more to fix the problem that they are causing. The next one is mining pollution. Most mining companies use water as a tool to create successful mines, but with working with water, it can be very tricky because it can have leaks, breaches, or spills. Because it's hard to control this water, the companies always say it's not my job to control the water, it's not my job to clean it up, it's just my job to seal it back up. So essentially, all these mining pollution and spills will lead back into the rivers themselves and pollute more. And then I also focus on ocean pollution. I realized that most of the ocean pollution has to do with the fishing industry and as well as natural disasters like hurricane and tsunamis and all this trash that we leave on the land back into the water. With all this in mind, I decided to make this datum graphic where I wanted to represent how I saw the Pacific Garbage Patch myself with its length and its depth to it. I added the 4 nodes to represent the 4 pollutants that I focused on. And I tried to use materials that I had been collecting over time. So the string or rope was made from water bottles that I made from a shredder, which was essentially a bunch of washers and a blade put together into a piece of wood where I'm able to start shredding these water bottles. With this in mind, I decided to make a theoretical campaign of how I can combat all these hypocrisies within our industry, within our daily lives. So my first idea was basically saying things with no thanks to social norms and things that are already in our systems and our daily lives and just refusing to fall into it. The second portion of it was creating an open call or an invitation for anybody and everybody to come to the Pacific Garbage Patch and start inventing stuff themselves, start using the trash and creating new things. I also decided to give the Garbage Patch a new name, Patch Haven Isles, to make it more inviting because I think Great Pacific Garbage Patch is kind of intimidating and sounds very ugly at times when you start talking about it. Then we have a jump to this timeline campaign, and it is somebody who had been experimenting within the trash, and they were able to open a ramen restaurant with all the things that they created. And then we have another jump into a climate convention where we have some pronounced voices within the climate community, and then the date of the climate convention is when the climate clock strikes 0. So essentially the climate clock is an art installation in New York, Tokyo, and London, which are also one of the biggest cities to have the most waste pollution, and it is counting down to when climate change is no longer reversible. With all of these posters in mind, I started to think, where can I go from this? So I decided to become a participant in the campaign myself, and that's where I started experimenting with this plastic shredder that I had initially made. I made a different iteration which was easier to hold and everything, and then started shredding plastic. There's roughly like 50 water bottles shredded up right here, so wow. They compress immensely and are basically very tiny once you start to take them apart. Once I had this rope already made, I was like, well, what can I do with it? It's just collecting right now, and I decided to make a 3D filament maker using the water bottles that I have recycled and shredded. So essentially, it heats up the plastic and it starts rolling up the filament as it goes around. And this is the filament and what it turns into right here.
So it's on, but it's not melting stuff right now.
It's not taking stuff right now because the fumes are not very welcoming.
Shocking.
Yeah.
She can't demonstrate it because of the fumes.
It needs to be outside.
Yeah, it needs to be outside.
Right.
Yeah, that's the plastic.
But the things that you printed are with the
recycled filament.
So
yes.
you strip the
Strip the
like,
water bottles, yes.
you strip the water bottles, you use this to turn it into filament and then 3D printed with it.
Yes.
Cool.
So,
And she 3D printed the filament maker.
so parts of the
But the 3D
filament
printer,
maker-
the 3D printed filament maker is not printed out of plastic water bottle filament.
Yeah, so I started.
The next one will be.
The next one.
The next one would be.
Since there was already a lot of irony and hypocrisy within my research, I decided to print a water bottle out of water bottles to kind of make it more permanent. And then while I was working
Is it
on
food
this,
safe?
haven't tested it yet. I'm a little scared.
I would be scared.
So while I was working on this, I also decided to make a few other experiments as well as recalling back to my ramen restaurant. I was like, what if I actually made like my own installation of a little ramen restaurant? And so while I was doing research back in February, I went to this sustainable compound where they essentially shred plastic and then use it in the concrete as an aggregate. I unfortunately don't have a plastic shredder, so I sort of combined both ideas and started stuffing plastic into this table that I'm going to use for my ramen restaurant as I was pouring the plastic. I made a little kit card as sort of like a toy representation made out of like what is typically plastic, and then with the instructions as well on how to make this table. Next came the chairs. So the legs of the chairs are made from bottle bricks, and essentially bottle bricks are trash that you keep compressing into the water bottle and making it durable enough to hold weight. So currently in some third world countries, they are using this method to create walls because it is a lot cheaper to collect trash than it is to buy materials to build houses for people.
How do they like assemble the bricks together?
What do you? I'm sorry. What do you mean?
Like in terms of like if they're using them to build walls, like what method do they use to get them to stay
So,
together?
Essentially they start stacking it like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And start stacking up as they start building the walls.
Got it.
And use mortar, right? And
They
they're
use
putting
Oh, they
mortar.
use mortar.
They
Okay.
use mortar as well to like
Got it.
seal it off, but
Gotcha.
instead of having actual bricks, they use the
Fascinating.
plastic water bottles. And then I also started experimenting in different ways. Like I made a little purse made out of 7-Up or like soda bottles as well. I can show that. The beads of the purse are made from the plastic itself.
Wow.
And I sort of, most of the things, except for the parts of the filament maker, are from the trash that I have been collecting myself and reusing in different ways. And essentially, by the end of this project, I realized that although everybody's putting blame on others, it's up to us to actually do this change and cause the difference. So I kind of wanted to get in the way of these corporations and take it away from them and create like my own personal like home lab on how to do like most of these things. And I kind of wanted to expose and spread awareness to all these things, kind of like cause that little itch in the back of your head as you're drinking your next water bottle, like, maybe I shouldn't throw this away, or maybe I should do something with it. So that's what my goal turned into.
Just wanted to say you're always welcome to use our plastic shredders up at Rosebud Continuum, and we just got a new one that's got a double axis, much larger than the one you saw when you were there.
I thankfully got a few collection bits from the plastic shredders itself, and it's very like well organized. Like it's separated by different types of plastics. Like I have 1, 2, and 5, which they all have like different purposes, different materials, and different melting points and stuff like that. It was very important for me to like actually like look into these because that's when I knew how I could experiment with each piece. So thank you for that.
I'm just really curious because in our experiments we have failed to be able to do anything productive with PET, and at Patel College we actually have, and you're welcome to use it too, a protocycler that does make 3D filament out of whatever shred we put in, but we've never succeeded with PET, so I'm wondering what your secret is. How are you able to get a decent print where the PET sticks?
It depends on the heat,
Mhm.
honestly. If you put it too hot, then it'll completely melt. If
Yeah.
you put it too low, then it's not really usable. So it became like a trial and error to see where the right spot was. Also, depending on the room's temperature, it's a
And
very
moisture
tricky
and
material
yeah.
to use.
Because, and we found HDPE and LDPE numbers 2 and 4, while we could make decent filament, the filament never made a decent print. It wouldn't self-adhere, and so we always had to mix with about 50% PLA. But you're getting 100% PET, the number
Yes,
one?
I've been using 100% PET.
Then you should come by my office and we'll look at the machine we have and see if you can
I'm not
custom.
gonna lie, I had a lot of help with this.
Mhm.
My first attempt, it kind of sparked a little bit, kind of scary. So then it was all
Yeah.
hands on deck to try to fix it. Because it literally sparked last, no, Monday.
What are you
What's in
using?
that box?
Yeah.
The power supply.
Okay.
It's,
That's the
they've
secret.
I'm a
called
little
it-
terrified of that.
Me too. Me too, I'm not
You have
gonna
the
lie.
caution tape on
The
it,
caution
so it
tape, the
should-
fragile
Yeah, it's very
stickers,
ominous
yeah.
looking.
So this is a self-built heating element. You're using some kind of nichrome wire or what? Because you're not using the Philibot or you're not using the protocycler like we have. What is
Essentially,
this?
I bought the pieces, and then I started assembling it myself, like watching like YouTube videos and doing like a bunch of research. So there's certain things that I can't control, like the motherboard and everything. That was that I had to have someone do it for me, so that's why I had to buy those pieces. But everything else, I have been like assembling slowly but surely.
So the shards or filaments that are in the bags, so you said earlier those can be used as aggregate
For concrete, yes.
in concrete mixes?
Mhm.
What, like, does the heat of hydration get high enough to melt those pieces in